I know that Shadow and Bone is supposed to be this really exciting new fantasy show that's supposed to kind of rival Game of Thrones. For me, it doesn't do that, but it's still a really great show, and this is going to be my spoiler-free review for it. So let me just start by saying that if you've read the books, then it is fairly faithful to the plot. There are a few differences, and those differences involve characters from the Six of Crows duology, which chronologically comes after the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but we kind of have the characters in the Six of Crow duology being, kind of aged a little bit so that they could be in the Shadow and Bone Netflix series. And I actually think that this was a good decision to make, because most people do like the Six of Crows duology a lot more, and the characters in that duology more, so bringing them into the Shadow and Bone series from the very beginning, I think is actually a pretty smart move. So I definitely liked that. More good things. I did like the special effects, they were quite pretty. There was definitely a good budget for the show. I enjoyed it. It wasn't great, it wasn't spectacular. I can think of other shows I liked more, like, for example, Game of Thrones, other than the last season, and The Witcher. But this was a good show, it's enjoyable, I'm really looking forward to the next season, and there's actually some new material in it for the Six of Crow characters, because we do follow a different plot from what you've seen in the books, for most of the characters, except for one. Now, if you haven't read the books, let me just tell you a little bit about the show. So, this is a fantasy show in a world set where we have people who are called Grisha, and they have special powers. And generally Grisha specialize in certain things, so a single person / Grisha will have a specialty like summoning storms, winds, or fire, or they're going to be able to manipulate the human body, like cause heart attacks and things like that, or they kind of manufacture things. And so our main character, Alina, is kind of implicated in all of this, and she has some special abilities. I'm not going to tell you what they are, because this is definitely a spoiler for the show. In the books you learn what her special ability is fairly early on, but in the show it takes a little bit of time. Not much, but a little bit of time. So, she has some special abilities that could potentially alter the world in a very unique way. Also, in this world, we have something called the Fold, which is this area of darkness populated by man-eating monsters. And unfortunately, people do still need to cross it, because on the other side, there is the second half of the country where our main character, Alina, lives. So people do cross the Fold to get resources and, interact with loved ones and things like that. And another prominent character in this world is called the Darkling, who is a very powerful Grisha who has power over darkness. And Alina unfortunately finds herself having to cross the Fold, and this obviously leads to some troublesome situations, and it actually catapults her into the world of the Grisha. So while all of this is going on, we also have a band of thieves and some sort of morally grey characters. And they are given an assignment to track down someone and bring that person back from the country that our main character, Alina, is currently in. That particular assignment is not very easy, and they do have to also cross the Fold, which, as I already mentioned, is no easy feat. So they kind of struggle with that, they try to figure things out, and their story is basically a heist story, so also fairly interesting. One of the good things about the show, for someone who has read the books, I did enjoy it a lot more. I think that the plot kind of progresses in a more natural way, a lot more things happen, we have a lot less kind of downtime when nothing happens, so I did enjoy the show more than I enjoyed the book. And of course, I also liked that the other Six of Crow characters were brought in for the heist storyline. That was also quite interesting. Also, I think that the actors were actually a very good choice. Everyone is acting pretty well, and I think that the characters are behaving in a very believable way. So I think that that is also quite good. Now for the bad. I was watching this show with my significant other, who hasn't read the books, and honestly, for a lot of the beginning, he was lost. And he didn't really understand what was going on, so at some point we just paused, and I gave him a lot of backstory and a lot of background information to help fill in the gaps that the show wasn't filling in. And a lot of these gaps were eventually filled in by the show, but some of them weren't. And I feel like that kind of really takes away from the story, not knowing these simple facts that you do get to know in the books fairly early on. And it definitely made the experience a lot more confusing for him. So that's definitely a negative about the show. So overall, I think it's pretty good. Not great, but definitely pretty good. And I'm definitely going to be looking forward to the second season, and I will absolutely be watching it. I definitely recommend it if you're into fantasy. And that was it. This wasn't a very long review, but I hope that I covered all of the important bits. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.